What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Endgame podcast. Florian Still Gaming here. Welcome back to Moon Knight episode 5 review and breakdown. We're 5 weeks in. 5 weeks in. Today's episode was good, but also bad. And I'll say bad because of production value and stuff like that, but I will say the actual story and the information that they were giving us was good because it was filling in stuff from the other episodes. So the story is coherent, but the filming and the setup of it was a little lackluster for myself. Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! If you haven't seen the show, you might not want to watch the show because I am going to go break down and go basically through the whole episode and give you my thoughts and just theories, speculations, the way I'm seeing it. For those that are new to this show, I don't know anything about Moon Knight. I don't follow the comic books. Don't know anything about the character. Everything that I'm getting and giving you my thoughts is basically based on watching the show, giving you my thoughts, just as a normal person watching the show for the very first time. And then after our show that we air, I go watch other people's reviews and thoughts of it, just in case, see if it lines up to what I'm thinking, or also open up my brain a little bit each week to go, oh, okay, I didn't know that, and then I might have missed that. So I'll go check out other YouTubers that also do it. But I put all of my thoughts on front, on air, right in front of you guys, so you might know much more about the character from comic books and whatnot. I'm just looking at this for just what the show is, right? Certain things we do after the show, after we do the review, we talk about it over a Discord. So we have people that call in and we just discuss theories, speculations, and stuff like that. So we do this every single Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern right here on 30 and Still Gaming. After the fact, if you want to watch it, you have to go over to Nerding with 30, and it's just the recording of my breakdown of the episode, not the actual call-in section of that. That's for live people only. So if you want to be a part of that, or you want to hear the people's thoughts or what they thought about it, you have to be here live each week at Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. All right. Sean says, everyone scanned the QR code. I did not scan it. I did not scan the QR code. I was watching it while I was at the doctor's office and whatnot. I'm very conflicted with this episode. We can get to that too, Matt. Krebsy says, I have the MCU Almanac, okay? And I thought his backstory was really good, seeing how the manifested Stephen. Yes, it's. I thought it was good, but like I said, we'll break down what I thought, or why I thought it wasn't as good. I thought the story was good. All right, so let me start it off where it starts off. It starts off with a waterfall, and you hear running water, and then you see a young lady, and it says, "This is all your fault," and you don't really know who that is. And then it cuts to the goddess when they're inside the psychic ward, and then all of a sudden we see Steven sitting at the desk of Dr. Horror, and he's got a nose broken, and this was interesting. And I guess I'll talk about this a little bit more later, because this moment here, it didn't make sense to me. I'm like, why is Mark's nose broke? And I was wondering, okay, and I was getting confused. I was like, okay, so they're in the ward, and this is my thought process as I'm watching the show. I was like, okay, so now he's back in the office, and I was like, okay, so is this a manifestation of what his psyche's doing? Now, you got to remember, last week we talked about that he's dead, right? He got shot, and his body, basically soul just came out and was going to the depths of hell, or whatever you wanted to call it. That's what we talked about last week. So now Mark is a messed up man. Like, he is. He's just a messed up individual. He's so broken in his mental state that he's compartmentalizing stuff in the psych ward, right? And then him talking to Arthur, or Dr. Arthur, I think he's even more disturbed, because now it's like a dream within a dream, right? He's dead, but he's dreaming and manifesting these things that are happening inside this. So Arthur's talking to him, and he says, it makes sense or doesn't make sense. And then he's like, Thanks, Doc. You know what? You're really making stuff. And then he gets up and he basically wants to like end his life with the sharp object on his desk. Right? So all of a sudden it cuts back, and then all of a sudden the hippopotamus is talking, and she welcomes them to the what was it called? The Dado, the I forget what it was called. The Dado, I think it was called. Basically, the realm between realms. They also make the Ascended Plane, which is from Black Panther, which in that moment, I think it connects, right? It connects to the rest of the MCU, or it connects to Black Panther anyway. So she's in one of the planes, and it's the area between heaven and hell, or different areas of. It's not heaven and hell, but it's like heaven and hell, right? So they're going to be judged, and she takes their hearts out, and their hearts look like stone, I think. And she welcomes them and says, "Oh, I've never had this before." And she says, "Welcome, traveler, travelers." And she says, "This is the." Let me read it for you. "Welcome, gentle travelers, to the realm of Duat." Duat is the Egyptian underworld, is what Steven says to Mark, and she is the goddess and woman of children. Okay, she's guiding us through the plane. So they find out that they have to basically find balance because the scales are just constantly moving. And because the scales are moving, they either have to balance the scales and they're okay, or their scale goes up higher than the feather and then they're okay. But if it goes lower than that, or if it's still wavering, then they go to hell. Okay? And she says you either go to the depths of the sands or you go to, I think, the reeds. And I was like, okay, this is pretty interesting. So it says it's impossible for the human nature to see it. So this is inside the realm, and they need to break out of this, and they need to try to escape this and get to Khonshu so he can basically heal. So basically on the outside, right now, Layla could be captured or could be doing something, and he needs somebody on the outside to go smash or break Khonshu's statue. So even though he's dead, Khonshu's part of his body, and as soon as they break that, he gets woken up, and his body will heal like Wolverine or whatnot, right? Let me go to the chat real fast. The setup in the final just doesn't get me excited. I kind of agree with you as of right now. Let's see. Duat is the realm to reach before getting to the field of reeds. The Egyptian version of Valhalla, basically, right? Or heaven or hell. That's what I'm saying, Sean. It's a version of Egypt, version of heaven and hell. So he goes out, and all of a sudden he's on a boat, and he sees this boat riding on the seas, and it's pretty cool. Here's my biggest. The effects were cool. Like the boat on the desert was pretty neat. But if you notice the production value, you can see that during the pandemic is when this got filmed, okay? During the pandemic is when this got filmed. And you could really tell. I said it a couple episodes ago. A lot of the shots are like really up close. A lot of the scenes are like in just closed locations, not many extras. That one episode where they were fighting in the town square or up on the rooftop, more bigger, project going on or production going on. But since then, it's been really kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say shitty set designs, because they're not shitty in any way, shape, or form. But they're bare bone stage setups, right? You can tell they're using the volume. You can tell they're using green screens. You can tell a lot of this stuff is happening because there's nothing happening. You know what I mean? It's just two of them on a boat, two of them in the hallway. It's Arthur and him in a room. Very, very low production value when it comes to of epic scale of maybe they're saving it for the finale. Okay, but it's very low tier, not low budget, but low tier. They're spending like $10 million an episode. Okay, so it's definitely going more towards CGI than anything else. So, like I said, she takes their heart, puts it on the scale, and they try to get balance. Now, This episode's pretty dark, right? It's pretty dark. Um, they go back in the ward, and she says, you've manifested this to other people. Think of castles or other things, but you think of the ward. And this is what he's doing. So they start looking through different rooms, and he's telling him, what are we supposed to do? Is this like a suicide mission? We're trying to get to him. We have to escape, right? So starts looking through his stuff, and then all of a sudden you see the shot of the bathroom scene in the very first episode where Mark is just, Moon Knight as Mark is just beating the alien or the demon up. Then you see the shot of Steven looking at himself when he's making the world go around and around. And then there's this street scene, and they see Mark out there in front of the thing, and Mark kind of plays it off as like, yeah, it's no big deal. It's a scene. It's just no big. But if you look at this is definitely soundstage. Like when we go to the scene later, there's nobody walking on the streets. There's no one. The town, it looks like a backstage of Universal Studios or Disney. Okay, and they're like, let's put 3 cars here. You stand here, and we'll shoot a scene. It looks very, very like student filmish at this point. Okay, well, Steven's trying to figure out what's going on, and then all of a sudden he goes into this other room, and there's just dead bodies sitting at a table. And there's dead bodies, and there's Egyptian statues on the tables. And all of a sudden, Steven's like, what the hell is this? Why is there just dead bodies everywhere? And Mark's like, oh, man, this is... And he remembers each and every single one of these people because this is every single person he's ever killed. Okay? Every single person he's ever killed is on this. Again, this is the most extras you'll see in the actual show. Okay, this is the most extras you'll see in the show. There's about 20 extras, and they're all just sitting, not moving, and they're dead bodies. Okay, while he's there, he's talking. I know these people. These are all the people you killed. And then all of a sudden, a little kid comes around the corner, and Steven's like, "Why is there a little kid?" And he's like, "Did you kill a little kid?" And he's like, "No." And Mark sees who he is, and he knows who he is. We don't know as the viewer at that moment who he is, but then we quickly find out. What it is, right? Steven runs after him, locks him out of this room, which I was like, why don't you just smash the glass? But I guess it's a dream or death, whatever, so he can't really do it. So all of a sudden we see this this mother cooking food. We see a father having a little picnic in Chicago, by the way, in Chicago. And then all of a sudden, the little kid's drawing, and Mark, as a little kid, walks up to his brother. I think the kid's name was Roro or Rodney, I think it was, or Randall. And he's like, hey, before we eat, let's go to the cave. And I thought this was a little strange, right? Because now, all of a sudden, they're in Chicago, but then all of a sudden, they're like in the woods. Okay, I guess Chicago is a big place, and maybe Chicago is on the outskirts, and they're on the forest or whatever. Maybe they're not in the city. And then they find a cave. He follows him in the cave. It starts to rain. And all of a sudden, the cave is starting to fill up pretty damn fast. And as you can tell, Steven starts to worry, starts to call out to the kids, but the kids can't hear him, obviously, because this is just a dream. It's not actually happening. And it's a memory. And Mark survived, and his little brother died, drowned to death, which is brutal, right? It's brutal. So Steven sees his mom through the window, or I'm sorry, Mark sees his mom through the window, and then all of a sudden it cuts back, and you see Mark struggling, and he comes into the room and sees Steven looking at his mom, and his mom is just absolutely devastated. She's hates Mark with a passion. She says, it's all your fault. You did this. You were supposed to protect your brother. And just starts to yell at him. And then Mark runs up the stairs. Kid Mark runs up the stairs. Steven runs after him. And as he runs up the stairs, he was like 10 years old, 9 or 10 when it happened. And then all of a sudden, now he's 12 years old. His birthday, his dad's celebrating. His mom doesn't want to sit at the table with him. And, she doesn't come down. So we see the time pass. It's been 2 years, 3 years. Then he goes to his the next birthday, and to 12. So the 9 birthday doesn't show up. 3 years later, or 2 years later, shows up, and she just sits down next to Mark and says, you should have, you were jealous of him, you always hated him, and just really just being mother of the year, right? Just being mother of the year. Uh, at this point, she thinks that Mark murdered his brother, and that's some dark stuff, right? Which I'm pretty surprised that Disney did this thing. Anyway, he runs into the room, and as he runs up there, all of a sudden, Mark comes up, adult Mark, and grabs him and pulls him out and doesn't let him go in that room. And you don't know what the hell's going on. And he's like, "What's in that room, Mark? Why don't you let me in that room?" And he's like, "You're not supposed to know, right? You're not supposed to know." And then all of a sudden, boom, he tackles him, and they're out in the middle of Egypt. And then there's all these dead bodies around him, which I thought was another weird thing, right? Because this is another room that you can tell they're using the volume. Okay, very low lit. You can see the background behind them, no extras, just dead bodies on the ground. And then all of a sudden they look in the distance and you can see Khonshu's like tomb like right there. Okay. But you see Layla's father on the ground and he's dead. And he's killed all these people, but he's like, "Well, where are you? Where's your body?" And then all of a sudden they look at the tomb and you can see going up there. Now, what I find a little weird is Mark's uh Mark's body, he's dragging himself to Khonshu's tomb. Like he's after somebody, right? He got shot, he was in a battle. I don't think he fought these guys, maybe he did. But who shot Mark, right? Did Mark get shot by these guys and he was dying and whatnot from the fight that he had there? I was a little confused by this. Like he killed everybody, but then scurried up the hill to get into Khonshu's tomb, and then Khonshu was saying to him, "Hey, you're dying. Will you do my bidding? And you can be, you can take my powers, and I can heal you and fix you." And he was about to commit suicide. And at this point, I was like, "Well, I'm confused. Did Mark kill those guys, or was Mark part of a bigger battle?" And he didn't want to kill those guys, and he turned on his mercenaries, and the mercenaries were trying to kill him, but then they didn't kill him, right? This is where I was a little confused here. Rebsy says this is a direct comic rip. The QR code brings you to the comic where this happens. Okay. So in the comic, then I'm going to ask, is the mercenaries that he's with try to kill him, or does he get in a fight with the people that he was killing? Right? Like, why is he like this? Anyway, so he's about to die, and he says, yes, I'll take it. And you can see that Mark had really no choice. He didn't want to die, but his life before this is pretty shitty. His mom hates him. And he's like, "You know what? Sure, I'll do it for you because I want to get revenge." It seems like he wants to get revenge, right? Be vengeance and whatnot. He wants to get revenge on whoever just did this to him or did that to Layla's dad, even though he didn't know Layla at this time. Okay. So Khonshu takes him and becomes Moon Knight. And then from this, we see him turn. Now, we don't know what year this is or how far ahead of this or how long Khonshu is with Mark up until the part we meet him in episode 1. All of a sudden, they're back on the boat. Right? They're back on the boat. They walk out the door, and then when they open out the door, they come out onto the floor, and you see some monkeys come out, and then all of a sudden you see like these bodies dropping. Now this got me interested, right? Because I was like, okay, is this Arthur and Ammit doing all of this where just dead bodies are coming down, like souls are coming and hitting the ground, not even being judged? Or is this taking place during a different time, closer to a bigger event, right? I'm not saying the snap, but I'm asking, like, is something happening right then and there? Or is something happening and that it takes place because a lot of people are coming down into the Egyptian fate? So I'm assuming, is this just taking place? Everyone in Egypt goes to this spot when they die? You know what I mean? They fight each other. Everyone dies. Mark gets hit and gets a life-threatening wound. Okay, so everyone was fighting everybody, and that's what he got. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. So all of these souls are coming down. I was like, all right, well, what's happening here? What is Arthur doing up on the surface of this? We're back on the Earth realm, where all these souls are just coming down. So obviously, did he release the goddess at this point, and she's just taking souls left and right? This got me interested, right? So then they start telling the hippo, that's what I'm gonna call her. Okay, you got to help us. You got to get us back to Khonshu so he can heal us, and then we can stop what's happening right now. Um, and she turns the boat, and she's like, "Well, you got to figure out the scales. You got to figure out the scales. You got to." So she turns the boat, and that got revived, and it's causing havoc in the world. That's what we think, right? That's what we think, though, Krebsy. We don't know. That's what we think. Obviously, that's probably what it is. Okay. So while they're up there, all of a sudden, they go back into the ward and then go back into trying to figure out what's happening. And Mark's like, I don't want this. I'll give a good performance by Oscar Isaac, right? Hitting himself and the acting that he's doing. This is a really good role for Oscar Isaac, okay? Like, he's doing a really good job, okay? Regardless if you like the show or don't like the show, I think he's doing a really, really good job of playing all these parts and the emotion that's coming out from different parts of the characters and whatnot. I think he's doing really well, okay? So he doesn't want, he's like, get out of my head, get out of my head, get out of my head. And all of a sudden, boom, he's back in. And then he's back in Arthur's office. And he doesn't have the scratch on his face anymore. Okay. And it's Mark. And as he's talking, Mark is like being, oh, wow, I think we've made some progress here. Okay. And at this point, he gets upset again and he's playing he's like, are you going to open up about Steven? Can you bring Steven back out? Can he pop back out? All of a sudden, it cuts back into the dream sequence or the memories of Mark sitting in his bedroom floor. And Steven and Mark are in the room. Mark looks really distraught, like looking at himself because he sees himself as this broken child, this weak-minded child that, his mom has just broke him because of not that there's not enough stress that his younger brother died and he feels responsible for it, but now his mom is validating that you are the problem. His mom's banging on the door, and at this moment, right? I thought this was interesting. This is a cool shot. Okay, let me show you the shot. The shot that we're talking about here is that it's a two shot, even though it's a single shot of a reflection. Okay, and he's in the mirror and he's in the foreground. And you see the bunk beds and whatnot, and they represent his brother or whatnot. And at this point, this is what I'm thinking, right? At this point, this is what I'm thinking, that he makes a personality to basically replace his brother. Okay, he becomes a replacement of his brother and also a person that just kind of knocks out. So he doesn't hate his mom. He puts it like, so when his mom comes in and starts to beat him, which is pretty dark, right? And just starts whooping on him. He's trying to block the pain out with the Steven character. Okay. And all of a sudden you see it roll up to the picture on the wall and shows the DVD or the VHS tape or the Betamax tape that Arthur had in the office, which was Stephen Grant, has no fear. So he went to a form of, he loves this movie. It's an adventurer. So he created the persona of Stephen Grant, and Stephen Grant is not really here. It's really, Stephen thought it was him. He was the real person. And we talked about this since the beginning. Like, who's the real one, Mark or Stephen? I said it was Mark because he's had Khonshu for longer or whatnot. So we can see as little as 12 years old, this is when Steven was created in Mark's brain, which is pretty dark, right? To be a kid and to compartmentalize something so you don't, right? And he doesn't want Steven to see this, right? Because if Steven sees it, then it breaks the whole point of what it is. But then you can argue because now he knows about it, then he has seen it, even though he hasn't seen it. So Mark grabs Steven and takes him out of the room so he doesn't see. Um, and Steven, all this time, he thought he was the original, but he's not, right? And it's something you made up. He's like, you got to live, okay? A happy, simple, normal life. Like, you understand? But it was all a lie, wasn't it? He's like, so what? So what? What does it matter? Okay? You want to remember that? You want to remember how our mother that beats you, that hated you, right? So he's taking all that and putting it into him and making a happier life with Steven, who calls his mom every day and talks to his mom and whatnot. So this is like a huge moment for Mark and Steven. So now it goes back to, you understand, like the first episode of him calling his mom and all of these things that are happening through all the other episodes, which is good. Again, the story is good. Well, the production value was a little low for this particular episode. Everything takes place in the hallways, in the rooms. Not a lot of scene changes. A lot of the stuff is very up close. It's to make you more chaotic and whatnot. He says that she's dead. He's like, no, she's alive. Okay? And he's like, no, she's dead. And then it cuts back to Arthur, and now Mark is not in Arthur's office. It's Steven. And I thought this was pretty interesting because now within the levels, right? So there's like Earth, and then there's where they're at the Duat. And then there's the space in between where he's dead, but this is him compartmentalizing. Like, while he's dead, you have to picture like he's still lying dead in the temple where Alexander the Great is, and he's sleeping and he's having these dreams where they're trying to, where this part, his subconscious, they're dead, right? The Duat, they're dead. They're trying to pass on to, heaven or hell, and they're being checked. But the stuff that's happening right here, at least this is what I looked at it as, is that when he's in the office with Arthur, this is like a dream. He's not totally dead yet. So he's becoming lucid, and he's coming back to like reality and having this dream of Arthur trying to get into his head. He's, you know what I mean? Like, this is his lucid state. And then when he backs out of this, he goes back into that deep REM where he's dying. They're talking to him, the don't go towards the light type of thing. So this is what I get from it. I don't know what you guys got the way it is, but that's the way I figured when he's talking to Arthur inside the psychiatrist room. Okay. So he's like, is this some sort of test? And Steven's here. He's like, oh, it's nice to see you. I never thought I would see you again, Steven. So he's met him before. I hope they answer the question next episode of all of this about Arthur being a doctor and whatnot, because it was a little confusing. But then he says, it's all a mistake, freak out, don't talk about my mom. He's like, all right, let me call your mom. They call the mom, and he hands him the phone. The mom's on the phone, and he hands him the phone. And then at that moment, that's when Steven knows that this is real, right? So again, this is how I look at it. In the Duat, he told him the information. And Steven and Mark are both on the deathbed. And then all of a sudden, Mark was going lucid in that in-between state, okay? But now Steven became in that state of awareness while he's laying in the water and dreaming, okay? And now what Mark told him down here is now reaching the subconscious level of his brain and compartmentalizing to go, she is dead. And now it's sinking in, because what was happening down in the ward is just them talking, but this is like his brain, right? This is his brain. And this is actually hitting that portion of Steven now. And then Steven starts to cry and is like, oh my God, it's true. Then it cuts back to the memory. Okay. Then it comes back to the memory of, you see Mark's father at the funeral. He looks outside the window. And again, this whole scene looks bad to me because it's so Bear. And again, I guess it could be Bear. Maybe the director was like, well, this is a memory. It's death. So it would be Bear. So like you wouldn't see a lot of people. But again, it looked a little off to me during this. His father says, come in. He says no. He drinks a little bit, puts the flask in his pocket and starts to walk. And then all of a sudden, he starts to cry. And then all of a sudden, you see this little move that he does, like he's all of a sudden compartmentalizes it and goes to, oh, where am I? And he's Steven again. And now Steven, he's like, oh, picks up the phone and starts to talk to his mom. His mom's dead, right? So he's making it all up in his head. He's literally so broken as a man from a child. So you got to admit that he's like, what, 25, maybe 30 years old? Okay. I don't know why my audio is clicking a little bit. Sorry about that. So I'm not sure, like 20 years, maybe 15, 20 years. He's been dealing with him and Steven. So it's been a really, really long time for them to be together. So much so that they start talking and he says, you know, all those horrible things that she said to you, right? It's not your fault. It's not you. You were just a kid. And then all of a sudden they feel a rumble and they're back on the boat. And they don't know what's happening. And then all of a sudden it's time, right? The guys start coming over, the Grim Reapers, I guess you can say. I forget what they were called. The Souls. The Souls come in and they start to fight. And you see them come up, which I thought was a pretty weak as well. They're just sand guys. I don't know. They didn't look. Yeah, it's around 30 years. They didn't look very good. I thought this was pretty low budget as well. Again, you could tell it was the room, or the volume, I should say, of the scene. It just looked very, cool, but not really cool. I like practical stuff. The only thing practical is maybe the boards that they're walking on. Everything else around them is maybe the doorway. Like this scene right here is maybe that doorway and the walls and the staircase is like the real part, and everything else is just all like CGI type stuff. So not a big fan of what that was. So anyway, they start fighting. Mark starts to fight, starts hitting their breaking up sand. He gets overtaken. He's about to get taken overboard, and then Steven saves him. Okay. Steven saves him one time, and then Steven saves him again, where he picks up the baseball bat and he starts to smash. And then all of a sudden you can see Steven now, because Steven is Mark and Mark is Steven. You can see Steven kind of break and just start smashing. The anger comes out, like the uncontrollable anger at that moment. And he fends him off. And at this one point, he gets taken by the big guy, or a bigger guy, and Steven runs at him. I didn't know what he was trying to do at this point. He runs at him and then all of a sudden falls overboard and he's down. Now, Mark is yelling at him, Steven, 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 and he starts to run, but then you can see like the sand's sort of like holding him like glue, and then all of a sudden he starts to turn into a sand person, like into one of the guys that was on the boat, and he's potentially dead. But obviously it's just a thought. It's just a section of Mark. Soon as Steven falls off the boat and lands on the thing, that's when it balances out. As soon as he dies, like he hits the ground and he dies, the scales balance out. As soon as that happens, Mark is transferred to the reeds, the field of reeds. And that's where we end up, right? So overall, I thought it was good. I did. I thought it was interesting. It filled in a lot of blanks. It filled in about, his mother, his father, when it all happened, when he started getting this split personality disorder, the shit that we saw, that when Layla's father died and when Khonshu took him over. So Khonshu's been with him for a good 10 years, if not longer, 15 years. So there's a lot of stuff that they filled in the gaps. We see a little bit of what's happening in the real world, where the souls were coming down. So we're assuming that Arthur what's it called? Saw the souls coming down, so we're assuming shit's going down up above. Um, this is what I think's gonna happen. This is what I think's gonna happen. I think in some way, shape, or form, obviously, Layla Layla is going to save Mark by getting to, I don't know how. I'm not sure. Okay, is going to save Mark, or I don't know why I think this. Like, we go back up to the real world, okay, and a part of me thinks that Arthur might save Mark because Arthur can't get taken over by Ammit, right? Because this is from what you guys told me last week. I think Zhang said this last week, that you can't be taken over by someone if you've already been taken over by one of the gods. Okay. Based on that, I was thinking, what if Arthur cannot get the next god into him? Yes, he's got a relic. Yes, he's got some power from her. But what about if it's like a double cross? Okay. We know that Arthur can get to where Khonshu is. I don't think Layla can get to where Khonshu is. So I was thinking, what about if Arthur, at some point, goes back because he gets double crossed by the god, and then goes back and gets Khonshu and breaks Khonshu free, which then wakes up Mark because it saves him. And then Arthur doesn't get either of them, right? And then when Moon Knight comes back, he starts to fight the other goddess, and there's a big CGI battle that's going to go on. I still think Layla, in some way, shape, or form, gets taken over by Ammit. And I think Steven, Mark fight Layla, okay, in some way, shape, or form when she's in goddess form. And we don't see, and I know Krebsy mentioned something in episode 6. I think the end credit scene, hear me out, I think the end credit scene is going to be his third personality. I think we're going to see Jake. I think just as the compartmentalized, Steven came out because his mom was beating him, there's going to be another traumatic thing and that breaks and shows Jake, the so-called Jake character, at the very end. I don't think we get Jake as part of the part of the show, but I think they basically hint towards it at the very end and guarantee it, like, oh, there is a third personality, which would then fill in the gaps of he asked a girl out, he killed those guys, he did this thing, you know what I mean? I think Steven is done with on the show. Oh, sure, but soon as Khonshu comes back and saves him, he comes back. So it's still a mental state. So Steven could come back just as fast. Could his third personality become the Egyptian variant of Kang the Conqueror? Maybe. But that would mean Mark is coming in, right? Regardless of if Mark, Steven, or the third personality, whoever that is, if he becomes Kang, then that's Kang. Mark is Kang, but Mark is Moon Knight, right? So I don't think that would work. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that's the thing. So I think by the end of episode 6, which I have to say, there's a lot of stuff going on right now because obviously the God is released. Obviously Layla's story is still there going on. We got to figure out how we're getting Khonshu back. We have to figure out how he's going to stop him. There's only 1 hour left, if that. So there's a lot of stuff going on in episode 6 here. We have 1 week left to close in the gaps. And so far, I do have to admit that this show is probably still the better part of the Marvel series. But production-wise, I haven't been too excited about it, right? Do you remember a lot of the scenes even in Hawkeye, there was more background talent and like they were in Manhattan. They still had extras walking around the streets. And yeah, a lot of the stuff was shot at night. so there wasn't a lot of people out and about, but there was still extras. There were still people in this show. There's not very many extras in the show. The very first episode in the museum scene, there was extras. Seemed like a bigger budget, and then since then, very, very little like bigger budget stuff that you can tell when it's a big production. So Stell says, I don't think so. The whole point of this episode was to make Mark come to terms with himself and be one person of one mind. Sure, and that's how he got balance. But at the same time, he's still pretty messed up, though, right? And here's why I think Jake comes out, or whoever the third persona is. Maybe he thinks he's healed, and then all of a sudden, some other traumatic thing happens, and then boom, his third personality comes out. Tyler says, who cares? That's a dumb thing to notice. What's a dumb thing to notice? That the production sets and stuff? I mean, I worked in the industry for 20 years. That's what I notice. Hence why I don't mark it down and say it's a bad show because of it. I say it's a bad show from my, my point of view. So who cares? I care. You might not care. But I'm going to tell you what my thoughts are of why they're doing what they're doing. So I appreciate you telling me what you care. So overall, I think this episode, not my favorite. I still think that was it the second episode or third episode was probably the best one so far. The one with the fighting. What is that? The third episode where he gets was it the swirling? Yeah, it was the one where he gets where Layla fights and stabs the guy in the chest. That episode so far overall, with the dialogue, the action, the filming, all of it, that's the best episode so far. Going into the last episode, episode 6, I'm not sure that they're going to, I think it's just going to be like WandaVision or Falcon and Winter Soldier or Hawkeye. They're going to have this, they're just going to really quickly like round it up real fast because they're just out of time. They took too much time. I think 8 episodes would have been better, but 6 episodes is what we got, and we'll see if they can finish out the series strong. Again, I think the series overall, I think, is the best one they've done so far. Yeah, next week is the last episode. Nope, next week is the last one. There's only 6 episodes, Stealth. There's only 6 episodes. So that's my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. The show is not over. Just this section of the show is over. If you like this, please make sure you share, like, and subscribe. Leave a comment section down below. Like, who cares? And we'll see you guys on the next episode, episode 6. Right now, we're going to do the call-in section. I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching.